Now for the surfboard, I might already apply a gradient because that's what I wanted to create here. So what you can do is use the gradient panel. If you don't see that, go to the window menu and choose gradient. And then I'm going to choose that gradient there and make sure that it's applied to the fill color and not the stroke. And what you can do is to press G on the keyboard to be able to see your gradient annotator. And I like to change things here, so I will double click on this color, change the color to red. And on this side, I will use the yellow or orange color. And now we can just rotate this gradient and then drag it down to the angle that I want it to have here. Yeah, that looks good. Now, if you want to have a more abrupt transition, so in case, for instance, I wanted the left side of the surfboard to be the red color and the right side to be orange or yellow, what you can also do is to set up new points in the gradient. So I can add another point here and set this up also being the same red, and then set another point up here. So you just click underneath that gradient line and then set up that again to be the other yellow color that we had there. And then I can just move this up here. So these 2 points get very close to each other. And this is actually not even a real gradient. So if we turn off the sketch, you can see this. It's not even a real gradient, but I still like to do this sometimes, having a single object, and instead of creating two separate objects to define the yellow part and the red part, this way it's still one object, and I have very fine controls over where I want the colors to change. So the body is the one that is hiding the transition. If I were to move this shape away, we can still see that there is a little bit of gradient there. It's just hidden away. So this is a clever little technique that I like to use sometimes. Now what I would like to also do is to have this shape selected, and I actually wanted to have a shadow cast on this. So for this I'm going to draw inside. So this is turning into a clipping mask, and I'm just going to draw a big ellipse. So for this I can just draw this big ellipse here. Holding down the space bar, I can move it around. When I let the space bar go, I can adjust it, and I'm going to fill it in with this darker red color. And now when you only need one side of a shape, a quick way to get rid of any unwanted parts is to shift to the eraser tool, that's Shift E, and then hold down the Alt or Option key and delete the parts that you don't need. So I will delete this and I will delete that. So that way we only have the shadows in these places, so in between the legs and on that side. Now I would like to also add some shading on the legs. So I'm going to select them now, turn off Draw Inside or press Shift D, select the legs and then press Shift D twice, or again use the Draw Mode toggles here in the toolbar. So now that we have this one selected, I'm going to actually use the pen tool here. Let's just draw this down. I'm going to do the shading here. And then just close this in. And then fill it in with this darker color. So I'm not going to use the same dark color as that one. I'm using this color, which is actually used on the surfboard. That looks good. And maybe let's add a highlight as well on this side. That can run all the way down. It doesn't have to follow exactly the outline of the leg. So I intentionally create a separate path, come up, and then fill it in with white. Now, this will only show properly once we have colors behind, but just so you can see it, I'm going to turn this off for now, and maybe we can already create our background layer, which will be useful in this case. Let's just create that, and then on that background layer I can just fill in the sea already now. Again, this shape can go all the way out here for now, and let's just fill this in with the sea color. So that's the fill. And yeah, that looks good. So we can see it without the sketch. That's the highlight we created, but we can always come back, make adjustments to it, maybe make it a bit narrower. Here on the top, it can be a little bit wider. Yeah, just like that. That looks good. Let's turn off the Draw Inside, select this other shape, and let's repeat this. So I will draw inside this side. going to use the pen tool and let's just draw down this segment here. I'm just drawing the shading first. So that's going to be this color, and then command click away so I can start a new line, and I'm going to draw down this way. Try to make it look similar to the other side, like that. And then set it to white fill. And then we can come back and adjust these angles a bit. One can go even closer, like that. And maybe here on the top we can drag it out a bit wider. Okay, so that looks good. Obviously, I have a source of light in my head. I imagined it coming from the right side. So that's consistent. We have the highlights here, shadows there. Again, the shadow is cast in this way. The shadows, again, are cast on that side. So that's, again, something that you have to decide on at the beginning and try to be consistent. For the surfboard, I also would like to make some changes. I'm going to lock my background color for now, or background layer, just so it doesn't get in the way. I go back into draw normal first and select the surfboard. And this is already a clipping group because we created the shading earlier on. So I'm going to just select that clipping path and go back to draw inside. So we are revisiting this shape. And I am going to draw with the pen tool. So I'm going to draw a shape up here, following the edge of the surfboard, like that. And then go all the way here, like this. And then let's close this around, like that. I'm going to set this to white fill, or maybe let's use this other color just so we can see it better. Let's turn off the sketch so we can judge it. Now I will definitely use white on this, but maybe we can use a gradient instead. So for the shape that we created, I'm going to assign a gradient, and by default it goes back to the previously used gradient. So if I use my gradient annotator, there's G on the keyboard, I can see exactly what's happening here. Now I want to change this first stop to be white, and I actually want this also to have an angle. So let's just drag this up here. You have to click when you see this cursor, so closer to this end of the gradient, you can drag it. I think it's only working on the right side of the gradient when you are using a linear gradient, so always go close to the right side and then you get that cursor option. And when you're happy, you can obviously reposition this, drag it further to the left or further to the right. But I have this white color set up here, and I will drag this gradient off. So just drag it away, that removes it. And I can drag this one away as well. And this other gradient I want to be yellow. So transitioning from white to yellow. And maybe we can set up an additional gradient here at the end. I'm going to add one more. Double click on that, and let's just use this dark red as well. So that way we have three colors that we are transitioning between. The white can come a bit further down. That looks good. So it starts off as a bright highlight. And again, I'm going to go back to my background layer, just so we have something here that we can see. I will actually duplicate this shape, Command or Control C, and then Command or Control F. And then the one below, I will just extend up to here, and I will fill this with pink. That's going to be our sky color. So now we can see how this highlight is looking on the surfboard, but I will come back and use the direct selection tool to move these points around a bit. So I want this to be thinner. I really just want the edge of it to be highlighted. Just like that. Drag it down a bit. Maybe this can come a bit this way. And then drag this one up here. Okay, that looks quite good. Maybe let's just drag this up a bit more. Yeah, finish off there. drag this out as well a bit more. Maybe this can come higher. Again, just to make it very thin. Yeah, that looks good. Now we will introduce some noise later on to create some extra texture. But for now, I'm happy with the way this looks.